As the war in Ukraine grinds toward its fourth year, European leaders are increasingly looking beyond the battlefield and toward what may come after the guns fall silent. A growing fear is taking shape inside the European Union that the end of open conflict in Ukraine could mark the beginning of a new, more covert phase of confrontation with Russia. According to warnings from Estonia's foreign minister, Moscow may be preparing to unleash a wave of hybrid operations against Europe by exploiting one of the war's most dangerous byproducts: hundreds of thousands of battle-hardened veterans. The concern is not based on a single intelligence leak or classified Kremlin document, but on a broader assessment shared among European security officials that Russia could weaponize its returning soldiers once a ceasefire in Ukraine is eventually reached. The proposed scenario is stark. After years of brutal warfare, Russia will have a vast pool of experienced fighters, men trained in combat, sabotage, and unconventional operations. Instead of reintegrating all of them into Russian society, European officials fear the Kremlin could redirect some toward operations inside the European Union, using them to conduct sabotage, destabilization, and covert attacks designed to weaken NATO and the EU from within. Estonia has responded by pushing for a sweeping preemptive measure: a blanket ban on all Russian soldiers who participated in the war against Ukraine from entering the EU's Schengen free travel zone. The goal is to close potential pathways before they open, preventing former combatants from moving freely across European borders once the conflict winds down. The concern is rooted in a broader pattern already visible across Europe. Since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, European countries have recorded a sharp increase in sabotage attempts, arson attacks, and covert operations attributed to Russian intelligence networks and affiliated actors. Incidents targeting infrastructure, warehouses, transport hubs, and industrial sites have multiplied, signaling what many analysts describe as an ongoing hybrid campaign against European stability. Security assessments suggest that Moscow has been recruiting and training large numbers of young Russians for state-directed activities tied to potential future confrontation with NATO. These efforts are believed to include preparation for sabotage missions and irregular operations designed to disrupt European societies without triggering a conventional military response. European officials now fear that once active fighting in Ukraine subsides, the Kremlin could intensify this shadow campaign. Russia is estimated to have nearly 1 million individuals involved in the war effort in some capacity, with hundreds of thousands possessing direct combat experience. Many of them may struggle to return to normal civilian life after prolonged exposure to violence and militarization, creating a volatile pool of manpower that could be redirected outward. Estonia's security services have spent months examining how former Russian soldiers might be used in such a strategy. Their assessment suggests that these veterans could be particularly effective tools for hybrid warfare: experienced, disciplined, and capable of operating in small, covert groups across borders. For European security planners, this possibility represents a new kind of threat. Not armored columns or missile strikes, but dispersed networks capable of carrying out sabotage, intimidation, and destabilization inside EU territory. The scale of the potential challenge is significant. European diplomatic discussions have circulated estimates suggesting that more than 1 million Russian citizens have taken part in the war in Ukraine since 2022, with hundreds of thousands still under arms. Even if only a small fraction were redirected toward hostile activities in Europe, the impact could be substantial. In response, Estonia has already begun taking unilateral steps, banning hundreds of suspected former combatants from entering its territory and sharing intelligence with European partners about individuals who could pose a security risk. The push for a broader EU-wide ban is gaining attention, but consensus among member states is not yet guaranteed. At stake is the question of how Europe prepares for the post-war landscape. Military planners know how to deter conventional Russian forces through NATO's collective defense. What worries them more is a quieter, less predictable threat: a hybrid campaign carried out not by uniformed armies, but by dispersed networks of veterans shaped by years of war. As the conflict in Ukraine continues with no clear end in sight, European leaders are already bracing for what comes next. For them, the eventual ceasefire may not bring true peace, but the beginning of a new and more complex confrontation stretching far beyond the front lines. In the meantime, Ukrainians are not wasting any time. Foreign fighters serving in Ukraine's Azov International Battalion captured 18 Russian soldiers in less than 24 hours during a uniquely successful clearing operation, the unit's press service said on February 6th. The Russian soldiers, roughly the size of an entire platoon, were taken prisoner during the final clearing of the village of Zoloty Kolodiaz, near Dobropilya, in Donetsk Oblast. Russian troops first entered the village in August as part of a particularly deep and large-scale infiltration operation that succeeded in penetrating around 15 kilometers into Ukrainian-held territory within just a few days. In response, several of Ukraine's elite units, largely under the command of the National Guard's 1st Azov Corps, were redeployed to rapidly stabilize the situation. While Russia's advance was quickly halted, dozens of Russian troops remained well dug in across the villages where the breakthrough occurred, with clearing operations stretching on for months. Zoloty Kolodiaz, one of the furthest villages reached by Russian forces during the operation, was ultimately cleared by foreign fighters of the Azov International Battalion, part of Ukraine's 12th Special Forces Brigade of the National Guard, better known as Azov. The final counterattacks to clear the village were carried out in December 2025, over 4 months after the initial breakthrough, a representative of the battalion told the Kyiv Independent. Formed in late 2024, the Azov International Battalion is made up of infantry and assault companies, as well as reconnaissance and strike drone teams. The unit includes both new recruits and those with extensive military experience, many of whom had already previously served in Ukraine's International Legion. Interviews with the Russian soldier captured in the operation, together with details of the battalion's mission, were released together with drone and helmet cam footage by the unit. A passenger and 28 aircraft armed with miniguns.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.